LoveLore Library. Chapter 90. Why? Sun Yilin still did not give up and asked. It seems that you believe it. Li Hongyuan played with the wine cup and looked at Sun Yilin with a smile that was not a smile. Then he put the wine cup on the table and tapped his finger on the table. Facing this living king of hell who did not walk the normal path, it was really not an ordinary kind of tiring. Sun Yilin leaned over to fill his cup and sat back in his original position. He didn't know if it was because he was powerless, but his posture was not as straight as before and even had a trace of decadence. Li Hongyuan looked sideways at Jingwan, who was not far away. And, that's right, in his eyes, there was only Jingwan. The living person who was leaning against Jingwan was completely ignored by him. You don't want Sun Yijia to marry Ben Wang. That's right, Ben Wang doesn't want to marry her even more. What does Wang Ye want to do? My younger sister is already like this, asking Wang Ye to be merciful. Perhaps he knew that in front of Li Hongyuan, excessive emotions would not be of any help. Not only that, it was easy to lose his reason and fall into a disadvantage. So, he gradually calmed down. If your Sun family had two more people like you, or if you were in the position of Duke Ding, even if Li Hongyi is an idiot, he would not be at a disadvantage in the process of competing with Li Hongming. Of course, the current you is not enough. You have to hone yourself for 2 more years. The Empress has contributed greatly to Li Hongyi being where he is now. That woman is top-notch in terms of tactics and shrewdness. But the fatal point is that her ambition is too big. A woman who wants to raise her son to be a puppet and rule the world herself often does not have a good ending. Li Hongyuan was still looking at Jingwan and thinking about Jingwan, but he was able to multitask and said casually. Sun Yilin, who had calmed down again, was shocked again, but he did not rush to refute his words. Even if he was her maternal family's nephew, he was still a foreign official and couldn't even see the Empress's aunt once a year. In the end, it was hard to say what kind of person the Empress was. However, if what Jin Qinwang said was true, their Sun clan would be in danger. That's right, it wasn't just Ding Guogong Fu. Once this matter was known by the Emperor, even if it would shake the foundation of the country, even if it would cause him to be labeled as a tyrant, he would not hesitate to massacre the entire Sun clan. The Empress is a smart woman. Naturally, she won't let others easily discover her ambitions. Among the people around her, probably only Li Hongyi can sense it. But Li Hongyi needs her, so naturally, he won't do anything to harm her. And for the same reason, she didn't completely restrain herself in front of Li Hongyi. Sun Yilin really wanted to say, you know it too. Moreover, he was able to know such a secretive matter. He was simply omnipotent. What does your highness want me to do? Why do you think Sun Yijia is very miserable now? Maybe she thinks she's doing very well now. Sun Yilin no longer expected Li Hongyuan to be able to speak properly. Li Hongyuan was always not on point. However, his words still caused Sun Yilin to ponder deeply. Ever since his younger sister's face was disfigured, her temperament had changed a little. But thinking carefully, she didn't become gloomy and gloomy. Instead, she seemed to be more energetic. Sometimes, she could even be said to be in high spirits. Something that even he, as her elder brother, didn't notice, an outsider noticed. Your Highness really knows my younger sister. Those who don't know would think that your Highness has liked my younger sister for a long time. Then, after her face was disfigured, you didn't like her anymore. Sun Yijia is indeed only barely acceptable with that face of hers. Sun Yilin's heart choked. He simply couldn't spit out a mouthful of old blood. He shouldn't be called the living king of hell. He should be called the living king of poison. His mouth was poisonous, his heart was poisonous, and his methods were poisonous. It was really a waste of that face. Perhaps it was because Li Hongyuan had been giving him one shock after another. It wasn't until now that Sun Yilin discovered that Li Hongyuan seemed to have been looking at his younger sister and Miss Luo. He definitely wasn't looking at his younger sister, so he couldn't help but be alarmed. "What is your highness looking at? You seem to be in high spirits." "Naturally, it's the most beautiful scenery in the world." This time, he got the answer after asking, but Sun Yilin wasn't the least bit happy. He didn't think that his courtyard could be called the most beautiful in the world by Jin Qin Wang. As for the two girls, needless to say, his younger sister didn't need to be mentioned. As for Jingwan, because he didn't know Li Hongyuan's thoughts towards Jingwan, even if he saw her at the last moment, it was impossible for her to be the most beautiful. Naturally, he excluded her. Then, perhaps he was just casually looking at a certain place, but was actually thinking about his own matters. Sun Yilin didn't think that he was lying. There was no need and he disdained to do so. Although Li Hongyuan couldn't directly take Jingwan into his arms, just looking at her like this was also not bad. It was enough for him to calm down. "What is your highness's intention? Please tell me, your highness, so that this official can make preparations." Li Hongyuan was repeatedly disturbed from looking at the beautiful scenery, so his heart was naturally unhappy. Finally, he gave Sun Yilin a look. "You're really persistent." His line of sight swept over Sun Yilin's neck. "You should be glad that your highness's mood is good right now. Otherwise, if you're so noisy, your highness might have already wrung your neck." This wasn't a threat, but simply a fact. Sun Yilin couldn't help but stiffen. As if he had whetted Sun Yilin's appetite enough, Li Hongyuan finally showed great mercy and opened his mouth. "Ben Wang doesn't need you to do anything. You can do whatever you think you should do. As for the reason why I let you know these things, it's better that you don't know. If you know, in case you do something irrational, your highness might be unhappy and end your life. No matter what, you're still considered a talent. If you die before you can benefit the common people, it's more or less a pity." A male peacock letting another male peacock teach him how to be strong and beautiful. If it wasn't courtship, then wasn't it obvious what it was for? A maidservant came and respectfully saluted. "Your Highness, Gongzi, Prince Kong has arrived." Li Hongyuan picked up the wine on the table and drained it in one gulp, then casually threw the cup back on the table. "Li Hongyi is worried that your highness will eat you up. He came quite quickly. It seems that he really values you. You're appreciated by Fu Huang, and you're also brimming with talent. You're the minister he reserved for his future backbone. If you're ruined by Ben Wang, he would indeed feel distressed. However, since he dares to go against Ben Wang, I don't know if he's prepared to pay the price." "Why is he going against you?" "It's clearly you who started it first." Knowing that Prince Kong was coming, Sun Yijia was naturally relieved. Although she felt that if Prince Jin really wanted to do something, even Prince Kong wouldn't be able to stop him, but now, Prince Jin would restrain himself and wouldn't do anything too excessive. Thus, she pulled Jingwan and left with the basket of flowers. His wife couldn't see. Li Hongyuan couldn't help but sigh with regret in his heart. Already faintly seeing the figures of Prince Kang's party, Li Hongyuan suddenly made a move. With one hand, he took off Sun Yilin's crown, and with the other, he tore open his clothes. Probably because they didn't expect that Li Hongyuan would suddenly make such a move, the servants at the side were so shocked that their mouths were wide open, and Sun Yilin was also somewhat stupefied for a moment. But when he saw Li Hongyuan casually throw away the crown, his fingers seemingly brushing past his collar, and then there was Prince Kang's furious roar, "Li Hongyuan!" Sun Yilin instantly returned to his senses, watching as Li Hongyuan indifferently withdrew his hand and sat back with a calm expression. With one hand propped up on the table, the other hand gently smashed the cup. His appearance was lazy, but his eyes were particularly gloomy and cold, as if he was really unhappy because he was disturbed. He was also really unhappy, but the reason for this was unknown. Sun Yilin could be considered to have seen with his own eyes this man's temperamental temperament, as well as the viciousness in his bones. For this kind of matter, even if you don't trust others, you should trust Ben Wang. Ben Wang is leading by example, not like those pedantic old fogies. How could Ben Wang expose the matter and forcefully break you two apart? Li Hongyuan said and sighed with infinite melancholy. After tidying up, he resumed his gentle as jade appearance. However, when he heard Li Hongyuan's words, his face cracked a little. As for the people who came in from the outside, Li Hongyuan mostly had an air of hostility and looked at people with his nostrils. If there was no need, he would never open his mouth. But sometimes, when he opened his mouth, he could turn red into white and white into black, infuriating people to death. Although they knew that he was talking nonsense, there were still people who couldn't help but sweep their eyes back and forth between Li Hongyi and Sun Yilin. Thinking about all the things that happened in the past, Jin Wang's words didn't seem to be completely fabricated. When Kong Wang heard those not-so-subtle mutterings, he only felt his head swell. When he thought about the humiliation and depression of the past, his eyes gradually became bloodshot and faintly red. He forgot the Empress's warning not long ago and, like an angry beast, he raised his fist and pounced at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan dangerously narrowed his eyes. In this life, he didn't learn anything else because it was all things that were memorized in his mind. But martial arts were different. If he didn't advance, he would fall back. If he didn't practice, he would become a cripple. Therefore, in terms of martial arts, he was already the most powerful among the brothers. What's more, he also had rich experience in fighting enemies. It could be said that if he wanted to kill Li Hongyi, it would be an easy matter. With a sidestep, he avoided Li Hongyi's attack, but Li Hongyi directly fell down because he missed. Li Hongyuan took advantage of the situation to get up and unceremoniously stepped on Li Hongyi's back. With a ruthless expression, he crushed it. Not surprisingly, he heard Li Hongyi's painful groan. Everything happened too quickly. By the time Li Hongyi's guards recovered and rushed into the pavilion, Li Hongyuan had already retracted his foot and stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Looking at the guards who were about to pull out their swords, he sneered, "If you have the courage to pull out your swords, why are your hands shaking? Today, Ben Wang will teach you well." With lightning speed, he pulled out his swords, moved back, and stabbed forward. That guard who had his sword stolen was pierced by his own sword. Blood flowed out, his eyes widened and his pupils contracted. Li Hongyuan let go and he fell to the ground. Coincidentally, a part of his body pressed on Li Hongyi's body, causing him to be covered in blood. In addition, the guards hurriedly retreated. Even if they were terrified, they forced themselves to suppress the urge to pull out their swords to defend themselves. If they dared to do so, not to mention whether they could beat Jin Qinhuang or not, even if they didn't die on the spot, they would undoubtedly die afterwards. Not only that, they would also implicate their families. Not to mention that Li Hongyi was frightened, even the people who were watching the excitement were shocked by Li Hongyuan's ruthlessness. Without any warning, he took a life. Who among them hadn't had their hands stained with blood and human lives? But basically, it was through other people's hands. Basically, no one would personally do it. Eldest imperial brother, look at this group of wastes that you raised. Ben Wang helped you take care of one. Remember to send a thank you gift to Jin Qinhuang Fu. After all, not everyone has the honor of making Ben Wang personally take care of them. Not to mention that killing people takes a lot of effort, it also dirties Ben Wang's hands. Li Hongyuan looked at the bloodstains on his hands with a face full of disgust. The words that came out of his mouth were really not the usual shameless. And Mu Gonggong, who originally no one noticed, came out in time to make his presence known. He trotted into the pavilion and put a snow-white silk handkerchief in Li Hongyuan's hand. Then he stood to the side with lowered eyebrows. Originally, he returned to Jin Qin Wang Fu with the Qin Wang honor. After learning that Li Hongyuan came to Dingguo Fu, he rushed over with the carriage. When he heard that his master had Sun Yilan accompany him to drink, he could only secretly sigh. Sure enough, if he didn't cause some trouble, he wouldn't be their family's wise and powerful Jin Qin Wang. Then he saw Kong Qin Wang, who hurriedly entered Dingguo Fu, and then Rui Qin Wang, Gong Qin Wang, and the others who came to watch the excitement, so he followed in. Li Hongyuan wiped very carefully, but after all, it was just wiping, so naturally it wasn't too clean. Then, Sun Yilan also entered the pavilion with a maidservant carrying water. Seeing the maidservant's shivering appearance, the water in the basin rippled. Sun Yilan personally took it. "Wang Ye, please wash your hands." Li Hongyuan saw that his face was a little green, but he still held the basin steadily. The current Sun Yilan hadn't seen this kind of scene. Li Hongyuan looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile, slowly soaking his hands in the water to wash. Compared to eldest imperial brother, Yilan really admires Ben Wang more, right? Wang Ye is joking. He put down the basin and picked up the handkerchief. "Do you need this official to help Wang Ye wipe his hands?" "TSK, he counterattacked so quickly. Did he find out that he resisted physical contact with him, so he deliberately wanted to disgust him?" He didn't respond to his words, nor did he take the handkerchief. Instead, he reached out to the side and put a silk handkerchief in his hand. Ben Wang isn't used to using other people's things. Sun Yilan indifferently put the handkerchief down and looked at Li Hongyi's guards. "Why haven't you helped your master into the room?" Previously, he had already ordered people to invite the Fu's doctor and sent someone to invite the imperial physician. A Qin Wang was injured, no matter whether it was light or heavy, they couldn't be the slightest bit careless. Sun Yilan wanted to turn a big problem into a small one. Li Hongyuan threw the silk handkerchief to eunuch Mu. Without saying a word, he flicked his wide sleeves and walked out of the pavilion. The crowd of onlookers subconsciously made way for him, not only because of the blood on his body, but also because of the strong evil aura. The two brothers fought. Although Qin Wang Kong was the one who attacked first, he was also the one who was injured. Therefore, this matter wouldn't end so easily. In the end, they still needed to see how the Qin Wang Kang's injury was. Moreover, when Li Hongyuan had a good relationship with Nan Feng, it would be officially put on the table of Emperor Lu Qingdi. Li Hongyuan didn't care about the consequences. He directly returned to the prince's mansion, took a bath, and changed his clothes. Then, he asked, "Did Wan go back to the Luo family?" After what happened in Ding General Manor, even if it was hidden, Sun Yijia wouldn't be able to hide it from her brother's attention. With Jingwan's keen senses, even if she didn't know what happened, she would know that something had happened. Naturally, she wouldn't stay for long. Replying to Master, "No. Prepare the carriage. This prince wants to see her." "Yes." Then, Jingwan was stopped halfway. After knowing who the other party was, she looked at the small carriage covered with green cloth. She knew that the other party was considerate of her. In addition, the other party's identity seemed to make it impossible for her to refuse. She gave Gong Mama and the maids a comforting look and calmly got into Li Hongyuan's carriage. As the saying goes, if it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it can't be avoided. There was nothing to be afraid of. Chapter 91. Even though Jingwan was pretending to be calm, the slight blush on her cheeks and the flustered look in her eyes still fell into the eyes of a certain beast. Not to mention that he was already experienced with age and had a pair of discerning eyes, he would naturally not pay attention to people he did not care about. As for the person he cared about the most, Li Hongyuan did not even have to think to know what Jingwan was thinking about. After all, Wan was a young lady who had never experienced love before. Even if she was a mature and experienced person, it would be strange if she was the same in this aspect. Taking advantage of the moment when Jingwan lowered her eyes to greet him, Li Hongyuan could not help but smile. He clenched his fist and placed it by his lips to prevent himself from laughing out loud. However, when he saw Jingwan's rosy little face, he really wanted to pull her into his embrace and take a few bites of her. As some thoughts started to stir again, Li Hongyuan's eyes became increasingly deep and serene. At this moment, Li Hongyuan did not say, "Get up," and Jingwan remained in her original state. Li Hongyuan looked at her quietly and saw that the blush on her face had disappeared and returned to its natural pink color. She did not have any makeup on her face and her lips were very beautiful and tender. Li Hongyuan rubbed his lips and recalled the delicious taste that he had plucked from her lips in his previous life. Not to mention that she was still young and in her prime, her lips were tender and soft. In his previous life, due to the ravages of wind and frost, she had inevitably become rough even though she was a natural beauty. Even though her lips were a little chapped, the taste still made his heart palpitate. In his previous life, there were many beautiful women, of all shapes and sizes, but at most, he would stop after tasting them. This was probably because Shangxin had triggered the deepest feelings in him. Perhaps at that time, he had already completely fallen into her hands. He might have resisted at the beginning, but when he allowed himself to sink into her, she was gone. When they met again, Jingwan heard what sounded like a painful groan from Li Hongyuan and instinctively lifted her eyes to look at him. She saw that he was frowning and clutching his chest. His breathing was a little heavy, but his eyes were fixed on her like a wild beast that was ready to pounce. Jingwan could not help but take a step back. She did not know if this action had angered him, but Li Hongyuan suddenly stood up, grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his embrace before returning to his original seat. "Your Highness!" Jingwan exclaimed. Perhaps she was subconsciously apprehensive about the current situation, but she subconsciously lowered her voice and pressed her hands against Li Hongyuan's chest. Feeling Jingwan's resistance and struggle, Li Hongyuan's arms tightened. "Wan, you still want to leave me, you still want to leave me. I'm telling you, I won't allow it, I definitely won't allow it." There was a strong possessiveness and an unspeakable fear in his voice. Jingwan thought of the night he was injured. He was also like this in a daze. She knew that it was not wise to go against him at this time, so she obediently waited for a while. After hesitating for a while, she reached out to pat his back. "Your Highness, calm down. This subject's daughter is not, don't talk, let me hold you for a while." Every time Li Hongyuan thought of his past life, Jingwan's tragic death, he would go crazy. Now that Jingwan was here, he quickly regained his senses. It was not like before, when the people by his side always had to suffer. However, she was already in his arms. Even if a certain person came back to his senses, he would not let go so easily. This was her boss. Jingwan knew that she could not afford to offend him. If things got out of hand, she would be the one to suffer, so she obediently let him hold her. But when she thought of how this was older sister Jia's fiancé, even if they hated each other, she could not help but feel guilty for betraying her best friend. She silently apologized to Sun Yijia in her heart. A while was fine, but wasn't this a little too long? "Your Highness." Jingwan pushed him, her intention obvious. Even if he was reluctant, in front of Jingwan, he easily compromised and let go. Jingwan quickly backed away, causing Li Hongyuan's eyes to darken a bit, but this time he did not move. "Have a seat." Li Hongyuan pointed at the soft cushion on the side. The soft cushion was comfortable and soft to the touch, and the surface was made of the best fur. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. As expected of a member of the imperial family. Ordinary people would not be able to see it, and even if an official's family had it, they would definitely cherish it very much. With the skillful hands of the embroiderers, not a single bit of it would be left behind on the clothes. But this one was good, sewing a large piece of it into a cushion. He casually looked at the things placed inside, and any one of them was of good quality. It was completely different from the shabby things seen outside. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's actions and expressions. He was purely curious and sighing, without the slightest bit of envy, let alone greed. Even if he was sizing her up, he was magnanimous, not sneaky at all. In the blink of an eye, that bit of curiosity disappeared, and he sat down quietly. Just now, it was this prince who was rude to Mississippi. Li Hongyuan opened his mouth. Outside, Annie, who was driving the carriage, had a straight face. Because he was also the head of the imperial bodyguards, when he appeared with his two identities, it was naturally different. Even if someone saw him now, they would not associate him with Li Hongyuan's imperial bodyguard. Hearing this, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Master, this shameless person, actually pretended to be a modest gentleman. Big-tailed wolf, so be it. You can pretend for a while, but you can pretend for a lifetime. In the future, when Miss Luo finds out, you're not afraid of being punished. No, your highness doesn't need to take it to heart. It had to be said that his attitude really surprised Jingwan. Whether it was what she heard or the few times she met him, it was poles apart from the current situation. Li Hongyuan seemed to be able to see through her thoughts at a glance. He chuckled, after all, you are this prince's savior. Jingwan was startled, not only because of Li Hongyuan's words, but also because of that smile. It was simply a blooming peony. Although it might be an ink peony, it was also the most luxurious, the most rare, and the one that was unbelievably beautiful. Li Hongyuan relaxed his body and calmly leaned back. His expression was languid, but there was also a bit of charm. Jingwan's lips and teeth slightly opened, spitting out two words, evildoer. Li Hongyuan didn't hear what she said clearly, but from the shape of her lips, he could more or less guess it. What did Miss Luo say? Ah. Nothing. I don't know what instructions your highness has for this subject. Li Hongyuan's line of sight fell on Jingwan's neck. How is Miss Luo's injury? Jingwan subconsciously reached out to cover her neck, but seeing Li Hongyuan's calm and upright expression, as if he really was just concerned about her and didn't have any other meaning, Jingwan felt that she overreacted. Her face reddened. She put down her hand, thanking your highness for your concern, it's almost healed. What does Miss Luo want? Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't notice her movements and spoke softly. Jingwan hesitated for a moment. This subject thinks, your highness's bodyguard should have passed on this subject's words to your highness. Li Hongyuan waved his hand, that's nothing. Although this prince is a bit of a bastard, it's not to the point of forcing people to do things against their will. Moreover, this isn't as simple as saving your life. Jingwan understood the meaning behind Li Hongyuan's words. If she didn't ask for something, perhaps Jin Qinhuang wouldn't be at ease. She had caught his handle, so how could she let him have some handle on her? Jingwan was silent for a moment before she slowly opened her mouth. Can your highness and Jia Jijia dissolve the engagement? Li Hongyuan probably didn't think that she would make such a request. Miss Luo's concern for her good friend is truly meticulous. Jingwan could hear that his tone had become a bit colder and knew that her request was very inappropriate. As the saying goes, it's better to tear down a temple than to destroy a marriage. Moreover, by making such a request, wasn't it clearly telling him that he wasn't a good person? Even as an outsider, she would rather damage her good friend's reputation and wanted to interfere with this marriage. Looking down on him like this, even if it was an ordinary man, he would be angry, not to mention that he was of noble descent. These words could be compared to offending one's superior. Jingwan hurriedly got up and apologized. This subject's daughter is rude, please forgive me, your highness. To be disdained by the person at the top of one's heart, it was impossible to say that one didn't feel anything. What's more, she was so attentive to other people, yet she was so distant with him that she could even be considered a stranger. He was very unwilling. But when he saw Jingwan frowning with an uneasy expression, he also felt distressed. Forget it, he could always make it up to her in the future. Get up, Your Highness. Wang didn't mean to blame you. Your request, Your Highness, Wang agrees. Your Highness. Jingwan raised her head to look at him, somewhat in disbelief. Li Hongyuan laughed in spite of himself. Is it possible that Wang's life is not worth a marriage that no one is willing to accept? Many thanks to Your Highness, but I'm afraid that this matter will make Your Highness feel awkward. It's not awkward, it's just being a scoundrel again. Wang has done a lot of scoundrels, so this one won't make a difference. Li Hongyuan said rather self-deprecatingly. Jingwan's lips quivered, feeling rather guilty. Li Hongyuan, this big-tailed wolf, was wagging his tail in his heart. This was originally part of his plan, but now that he had an unexpected harvest, it could be considered a small compensation for him. But there is one thing that I need to remind Miss Luo. This prince has a reputation of bringing bad luck to his wife. None of the women that have been engaged to this prince have a good ending. I'm afraid that before this prince can resolve this matter, something will happen to your good sister. Jingwan gave an indifferent smile. That's pure nonsense. This subject doesn't believe in such things. Even if something like this really happened, it's probably because I haven't met the destined person. That's right, you haven't met the destined person. In your previous life, you didn't meet the destined person, so your ending was tragic. This prince didn't meet the destined person, so I was deceived and betrayed. The two of us should be together. Sit down. Your Highness, if there's nothing else, this subject will take her leave first. After all, Miss Luo, are you planning to throw me away after using me? You're not even willing to sit with this prince for a while longer. Jingwan was speechless. What did he mean by throwing me away after using me? His words made her speechless, as if she had nothing to say. But since he had said so, Jingwan could only sit back down. For a moment, the carriage fell into silence. Jingwan looked down and Li Hongyuan kept looking at her. With such an unabashed gaze, it was difficult for Jingwan to pretend that she didn't know. Finally, she couldn't help but look at Li Hongyuan. Is this subject and that girl that similar? Li Hongyuan was somewhat baffled by her question and for a moment, he didn't respond. Jingwan's imagined result was that this Jin prince originally had a true love, but she didn't know why she left him. Perhaps because of this, he became greedy for flowers and beauties. She originally thought that he was muddle-headed from his fever that night, so he held on to the person in front of him. But looking at him just now, he was clearly sober and did the same thing. Then it could only mean that there were similarities between her and that girl, and she was afraid that it was quite a lot. Although saying it might expose his scars and even anger him, it was very uncomfortable to be stared at from the back. Therefore, Jingwan was bold for once. Seeing that he didn't understand, she deliberated for a moment. It's that Wan girl that you spoke of. How could Li Hongyuan not understand? She thought that he treated her as someone else. His face immediately darkened. He did so much, and this was the result. He really wanted to directly pull her over, strip her clothes, and then tell her who the person he called was. Jingwan felt that she might have lit a barrel of explosives. Jin Prince seemed to want to strangle her. Jingwan was vexed. How could she be muddle-headed and dare to stroke the tiger's whiskers? Was it because the man in front of her was too peaceful? Or was she relying on her resemblance to his sweetheart, relying on the fact that she was his savior? In fact, Jingwan herself didn't realize that she had always been a cautious person, but on Li Hongyuan's matters, she was bold more than once. Wang Ye, calm your anger. Who told you that? Li Hongyuan said through gritted teeth. Is it not? Jingwan weakly asked. Li Hongyuan was choked by her. It had always been him choking others. Was Jingwan here specifically to subdue him? In fact, Jingwan couldn't be blamed for thinking this way. There was no way to explain this matter. Shut up for Ben Wang. Jingwan obediently did as she was told. After all, this living king of hell only told her to shut up and didn't directly strangle her to death. This was already very benevolent. Li Hongyuan frowned and fiercely closed his eyes, covering his eyes. Jingwan didn't expect that this insufferably arrogant man would be in so much pain. Sure enough, no matter how ruthless and dark a person was, there would always be a soft side to his heart. After Li Hongyuan moved his hand away, he had already recovered his calm. He only faintly looked at Jingwan. Jingwan pursed her lips. This subject's daughter is very sorry. Sorry is enough. Since Miss Luo feels this way, why don't you compensate Ben Wang with yourself? Li Hongyuan coldly said. Wang Ye, please have some self-respect. Although Jingwan felt guilty about what happened just now, it didn't mean that she would obediently be humiliated. TSK, she was still so amenable to coaxing but not coercion. In her previous life, this kind of personality was more or less a factor in her suffering. Under the imperial power, it could be said that without power, there was no right to be arrogant. It was even more likely that one's pride would be broken. In reality, if Wan chose herself and abandoned her husband's family, she could at least live. But she was unyielding and unyielding. Her husband's family didn't betray her, so she didn't abandon them and chose the most difficult and tragic path. There is no such thing as self-respect for Ben Wang. What do you want? Jingwan frowned and coldly looked at him. Wang Ye's position is high and powerful. In your eyes, this subject's daughter is naturally nothing, the Luo family. The two words Li Hongyuan made Jingwan shut her mouth. In fact, her weakness was very obvious and easy to catch. People like them would definitely be able to catch her easily. Wang Ye doesn't need to use the Luo family to threaten this subject's daughter. This subject's daughter should bear the consequences of her own actions, rather die as a piece of jade than as an intact tile, banishing yourself from the Luo family. Surprise flashed through Jingwan's eyes. This man is really terrifying, seeing through everything. Sure enough, when faced with a threat to the Luo family, she would still make the same choice. Li Hongyuan laughed. Ben Wang is not someone who will not be implicated just because he has distanced himself from the relationship. Enough, Ben Wang is not such a petty person. I won't go as far as to exterminate an entire family over such a small matter. Seeing that Jingwan was still frowning, he was slightly displeased. Girls should dress up beautifully and live their own days without worries. Don't think about this and that all day long. If you worry too much, be careful that you will age quickly. Your future husband will be distressed. Jingwan raised her eyebrows again. Was this really what Jin Qinwang said? And the speed at which he changed his face, just treat it as if Ben Wang treats you as her. However, you can rest assured that Ben Wang will not do anything to you. This was not an excuse to be good to her. As for this misunderstanding, since it had already been created, he would slowly think of a way to eliminate it after marriage. In any case, at that time, the person would already be in his mouth. There would be time to grind with her, time to let her see the truth clearly. You can go back early. Jingwan only felt that Jin Qinwang's attitude was a bit strange. It was really like what he said, treating her as her. But she felt that it was not the case. However, being alone with a man for so long was indeed very inappropriate. Since she was allowed to leave, Jingwan also did not stay for long. Chenu will retire. Annie very perceptively lifted the curtain from the outside and put a stool next to the carriage. He respectfully asked Jingwan to get off the carriage. After getting off the carriage, Jingwan looked back at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan sat upright and nodded at her with a faint smile. His eyes were faintly gentle, but it did not seem like he was looking at others through her. Seeing that their family's young lady had finally come down, Gong Mama and the servant girls hurriedly went up to greet her. The servant girls' faces were full of anxiety. Seeing that Jingwan's complexion was not very good, they thought that something had happened. Gong Mama slightly frowned. Because the two carriages were far apart, she could only faintly hear some things and could not connect all the things together. "Young lady, it's nothing, go back." Jingwan waved her hand. Seeing that she did not want to say more, Gong Mama also did not ask anything. She just looked at Li Hongyuan in the carriage from a distance. A long time after Luo family's carriage left, Li Hongyuan was still sitting there, not saying a word. He did not speak, so Annie could not do anything, just like a shadow. In fact, when Annie heard Jingwan's words, he slightly sympathized with his master. "Annie, are you thinking that this is the retribution for Ben Wang's usual evil deeds?" Annie was shocked into a cold sweat. This feeling of being seen through in an instant was really terrifying. This subordinate does not dare return to the Fu. Yes. Returning to Jin Qinwang Fu, Mu Gonggong told him two things. First, Chen family's third branch had arrived in the capital. Second, Kong Qinwang had entered the palace. "Wan, you're going to get engaged." Although this was a planned matter, his heart was still very unhappy. Chapter 92. When Jingwan returned to the Luo family, she had already regained her calm. She didn't know what Jin Qinwang wanted to do, but she could only do what she should do. If something happened, then she would deal with it accordingly. If she couldn't deal with it, then perhaps she should just wait for someone to deal with it. Jingwan didn't take the initiative to talk about it, so Gong Mama also didn't ask. Even if Jingwan treated her as an elder, after all, there was a difference between master and servant. In addition, Jingwan herself had her own opinions. Even if she was worried, she would strictly abide by her duties and wouldn't ask about everything. She just repeatedly instructed the two servant girls accompanying her to keep their mouths shut and not mention a single word to anyone. The two servant girls also knew that this matter was related to their family's young lady's reputation, so they repeatedly promised Gong Mama. As for the coachman, Gong Mama just said a few words. Regarding this person, Gong Mama wasn't worried at all, because he was the living king of Hell's people. The arrival of the Qin family's third branch in the capital also meant that the marriage between Jingwan and Qin Jingmin was officially put on the table. When the Qin family came to the Luo family, after Qin Jingmin's elders saw Jingwan, there was no one who was dissatisfied. Such a young lady was simply outside of their expectations. Qin Jingmin's mother took off a bracelet on the spot and put it on Jingwan's hand. After that, the entire Luo family basically knew about this marriage. Perhaps it was because Luo Jingying had gotten a definite answer from her father. Her father had listened to her suggestion and she would get what she wanted, so she was in a good mood. That was why she smiled at everyone she met. It was the kind of smile that came from the bottom of her heart. She did not act one way in front of others or behind their backs. With the help of Luo Rongping's money, Luo Jingying looked brand new. In the past, she didn't like delicate and beautiful clothes and jewelry, but now she was very fond of them. Those things that she loved in the past, in a flash, were discarded by her like worn-out shoes. It was so natural that one couldn't see any reluctance. It must be said that some of her strength was really not ordinary. Luo Jingying took the servant girls to the begonia house. Mimi congratulates third Jije here. Jingwan glanced at her from head to toe. Unlike Luo Jingying's expectation, she chuckled and said, "Congratulations to you too." Luo Jingying was startled and a little flustered. Could it be that their third branch's plan had been found out? But thinking about it, it was simply impossible. Third elder sister really knows how to joke. Little sister doesn't have any good news. The third branch is harmonious. Third uncle treats fourth sister even better than before. Third aunt is also more virtuous and generous. Fourth sister is going to have a younger brother or sister. Isn't that a good thing? Jingwan said with some doubt. Even though Luo Jingying was in a good mood, her face cracked a little. She knew better than anyone the reason why the third branch could have a temporary peace. They were clearly poking her where it hurt. Luo Jingying was so vicious. She originally wanted to wait until she had a bright future and ask Prince Rui to support her third elder sister's husband's family. But it seemed that it was completely unnecessary. If she couldn't grasp the opportunity given to her, what else could she do? As for that slut, now that her father was protecting her, she could be arrogant for a while. When she and Prince Rui's matter was settled, she would slowly deal with her and the bastard child in her belly. Third elder sister is right. It is indeed a good thing. Jingwan smiled and nodded. Luo Jingying came happily and left angrily. She couldn't say anything now. Just wait and see. One day, Luo Jingwan will have to kneel and beg me. Fourth young lady is becoming more and more unruly. Qing Ju was outspoken. After Luo Jingying left, she couldn't help but twitch her mouth. Shut up. How is fourth young lady? It's not something you can talk about. The wet nurse patted Qing Ju. Qing Ju wrinkled her nose and didn't speak anymore. The others laughed and shook their heads. Because both sides had intentions, the rest of the matter was natural. The third branch of the Qin family had just arrived in the capital and naturally didn't have time to buy many things. However, the first branch had already prepared. They didn't think that the third branch would refuse this marriage. In fact, when Chen Jingmin learned of this matter, he was overjoyed. This was something he had never expected. He didn't dare to dream of a girl like the third cousin of the Luo family before. If he could get a good ranking after this imperial examination, it would be fine. But now, he was so happy that he was silly. Not Siley was well behaved. The geese he used were the commonly used wooden ones. Chen Jingmin wanted to get a live one, but unfortunately, he could only dream about it. Fortunately, whether it was the Luo family or Jingwan herself, they didn't care too much about this. It was enough for them to be polite. Then, it was time to exchange the marriage invitation. In just a few days, it was basically done smoothly. However, because Jingwan's coming-of-age hairpin ceremony had to wait until next year, whether it was Madame Luo, Luo Peishan, or even Jingwan's parents, they all hoped to keep Jingwan for 2 more years. Therefore, the wedding date was at least 2 years away. This gave Chen Jingmin some time to make some achievements. At least, the elders of the Luo family would be more assured to hand Jingwan over to him. He also thought so. A girl like his cousin needed to be pampered. He couldn't have nothing. When all these things were settled, Madame Luo also breathed a sigh of relief. Before, she still felt uneasy. It seemed that she thought too much. She didn't know if it was intentional or not, but Jingwan's engagement was done very low-key. Of the 3 best sisters she met after entering the capital, only Yuan Xiaoqiao knew some news from her mother. After all, this kind of happy event, it was normal for relatives to know. The other 2 were completely unaware, especially Sun Yijia. Perhaps she faintly felt that Sun Yijia really wanted her to be her sister-in-law. These days, Jingwan even unilaterally cut off all contact with Sun Yijia. Fortunately, because of the trouble caused by Kong Qin Wang, Jin Qin Wang, and Sun Yilin, Dingguo Gong Fu was once again in the midst of the wind and waves. Sun Yijiao was getting married next month and had a lot of things to do. Jingwan hid it from her, so she couldn't go to the Luo family. The wedding date was still early. Embroidering the dowry and so on could be done slowly. Therefore, Jingwan went out. It was time to go see Yuan Chaoqiao and Zhou Yingshuang. As for Dingguo Gongfu, it was not convenient to go for the time being. The love triangle between the three men and how the court and the harem had become, Jingwan knew clearly from her grandfather, Luo Peishan. After Jingwan heard about it, there was only one word that could describe her feelings: embarrassed. In her opinion, this matter was most likely caused by Jin Qin Wang. If he really didn't care about men and women, he most likely wouldn't reach out his hand to Sun Yilin. What could be done that would be disadvantageous to him? There was no reason for that kind of person to not be clear. Playing around was one thing, but if it was for real, then it was completely different. However, Jingwan always felt that it might not be just because his bad temper flared up. Doing something for entertainment when he had nothing to do was probably just to cover up his true purpose. But she also didn't hear her grandfather mention anything else in the court that was worth paying attention to. If Jingwan knew that Li Hongyuan's purpose was just to tie down the feet of one love rival and let the other love rival smoothly get engaged with the girl at the bottom of his heart, what kind of expression would she have? Making such a big fuss, was it just to help the love rival? It should be said that Jin Qin Wang really wasn't an ordinary person. His mind was treacherous, and he didn't act according to common sense. Even when she went to see the people who were recuperating, she didn't bring any medicinal herbs or the like. Those things, the Luo family had already sent a lot of them over. Jingwan only brought a few pots of flowers and plants, as well as the rouge and face powder that she had made these days. There were also some skincare products, all of which were made with pure natural ingredients, so there was no need to worry about being poisoned. Jingwan first went to the Yuan family. Yuan Chaoqiao's father was the director of the Ministry of Appointments. A fourth-rank official, in a local area, may be a leader, but in a place like the capital, it really didn't count for much. However, the Ministry of Appointments was in charge of the appointment, dismissal, examination, promotion, transfer, and so on. Therefore, even if it was the lowest rank official in the Ministry of Appointments, there would still be a lot of people fighting over it. Didn't you see how when Jingwan and the others entered the capital, when eldest aunt came to visit, Lucia anxiously rushed forward to curry favor? Yuan Chaoqiao's situation wasn't bad. Luo Peishan personally invited the imperial physicians from the imperial hospital, and with the medicine prescribed by Great Master Liaoqin, her situation was much better than expected. Compared to before, her body might be a bit weaker, but it wasn't to the extent that she would become a pot of medicine that couldn't be exposed to the wind. As long as the broken leg was properly taken care of, there wouldn't be any hidden dangers. Wan, you finally came. I was almost bored to death in the room. As soon as she heard Yuan Chaoqiao say the word die, her wet nurse hurriedly spat twice, telling her to stop talking nonsense. Yuan Chaoqiao hurriedly responded and didn't say anything else. She turned around and stuck out her tongue at Jingwan. It seemed that because of this matter, she had been tormented in many ways. Jingwan saw that Yuan Chaoqiao was so energetic that she was truly relieved. However, with Yuan Chaoqiao's lively personality, she was afraid that she really was bored to death because she couldn't move her leg. Where's Aunt? Why don't I see her? Jingwan didn't see her from the moment she entered the Yuan family's gate. Yuan Chaoqiao pursed her lips. I think you know about our family situation. Isn't it because there's trouble over there? My mother is now serving her like an old maid, and my grandmother and the others are also complying with her in everything. I hope she can really give birth to a son, otherwise, she'll suffer afterwards. Yuan Chao Chao was so relaxed and didn't worry about her mother at all because she knew that her father and grandmother treated her mother very well. Although her grandmother was also worried that her mother couldn't give birth to a grandson for her, she still repeatedly comforted her mother that this child was fate. Even if she didn't have a legitimate younger brother, her grandmother wouldn't put a concubine above her mother's head, and her father wouldn't spoil the concubine and neglect the wife. Therefore, when Jingwan said that her grandfather didn't choose the wrong person for her aunts, she wasn't just saying it. Jingwan didn't say much. In this kind of situation, as one of those lucky concubines, 9 out of 10 of them were arrogant. If they got what they wanted, they might become even more arrogant. However, if they met a powerful matriarch, it was equivalent to giving birth to a child, and there was nothing for her to do. If she was obedient, she might be able to keep her life. If she wasn't obedient, she might be able to keep the child and leave the mother. This kind of thing couldn't be more normal. Let's not talk about this anymore. It's so boring. What did you bring for me? Let me take a look. There were a few pots of green flowers and plants, big and small. They looked very spirited and made people feel comfortable just by looking at them. They're raised very well. Is there anything I need to pay attention to? What if I don't pay attention to them and they go bad? I know that cousin is a careless person, so these are very easy to raise. Jingwan looked at her with a smile. You've got guts. You dare to laugh at cousin. Yuan Chao Chao wanted to tickle her. Jingwan dodged it easily. Cousin, you should wait until your leg is better before we talk about it. Yuan Chao Chao was so angry that she pounded the bed and said ruthlessly that when she recovered, she would definitely teach her a lesson. Jingwan saw that she was full of energy and stopped teasing her. Instead, she began to coax her and asked the servant to take out other things. Most girls would like these things. Sure enough, Yuan Chao Chao was very happy when she saw them. One had to know that when they were at White Dragon Temple, the simple makeup made by Jingwan gave them a big surprise. Although Jingwan didn't make a lot these days, she prepared most of it to give to her 3 good sisters. Therefore, after distributing it, it wasn't a small amount. It was enough for them to use for a while. Of course, if they were to give it away, it would be a different story. Try it on the back of your hand for 2 days. If there's no problem, use it on other places. Why? I'm worried that there will be problems like redness or rashes. How is that possible? Wan, would you harm me? Yuan Chao Chao waved her hand dismissively. It's not like that. Everyone's skin is different. Some things can be used, while others can't. It's like how some people will feel uncomfortable when they touch certain flowers. It's the same principle. I'm worried that you will suffer. There's such a thing. Yuan Chao Chao was surprised. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and her expression changed. Wan, I suddenly remembered something, so I won't keep you. You can go back first. I'll apologize to you next time. She lowered her voice. Also, about your engagement, you're really fast. I'll have to ask you properly next time. Jingwan thought that what she said probably made Yuan Chao Chao think of something else. She didn't want to stay any longer and got up to leave. Jingwan hoped that she could be the first. Otherwise, after the marriage, if the other party wasn't as good as she expected, she would definitely be more disappointed or even painful. A little hurt from the other party would be 10 times or 100 times more painful. However, at this time, Jingwan naturally wouldn't pour cold water on her. Little girls who fell into the river of love were similarly unreasonable. If you said that the other party wasn't good, you might have ulterior motives. Perhaps, the other party would think that you were sowing discord and couldn't bear to see her well. Good sisters, good girlfriends who turned against each other because of a man, weren't there many? Perhaps she should take some time to talk to her wet nurse and let them remind her at an appropriate time. However, these words really weren't suitable for an unmarried little girl like her to say. Jingwan suddenly patted her own head. Which woman in the inner courtyard wasn't sophisticated? Even if they hadn't seen the twists and turns of the inner courtyard, they had heard a lot of it. What else could they not think of? After reaching the same point, she no longer hesitated and took out the gift for Zhou Shuang. In Gong Mama's opinion, her miss was good in every way, but sometimes she just loved to worry. And the things that she worried about basically wouldn't happen. With how much the prince cared about her, if she was unhappy, he would naturally help her get rid of the source of her unhappiness. Gong Mama had never worried that her Mrs. Close friends would have a bad life in the future, even if it was Sun Yijia who was in the worst situation right now. Chapter 93. The Lord Chancellor's wife was able to visit the Zhou family on the second day. It was not necessarily because they were so loyal and righteous. It was also possible that someone was involved in this matter. Zhou Shuang took note of some of the precautions that Jingwan mentioned. She even asked Jingwan a lot of questions about skincare and skincare. When she was in Bailong Temple, although she was very interested in these, but because of her eyes, compared to Sun Yijia and Yuan Chao Chao, she was not so enthusiastic. Now that her eyes were just beginning to recover, she could not wait. The so-called "a woman looks good for her lover" was not false at all sometimes. However, it was human nature to always hope that the person she liked could see her best side. Therefore, Jingwan did not hide it. However, it was one thing to talk about it, and another thing to do it. And as mentioned before, the method that was suitable for Jingwan might not be suitable for Zhou Shuang. Therefore, Jingwan also warned her to be serious. If she did not make herself more beautiful, but worse, the loss would outweigh the gain. However, thinking that the women here cared about their own appearance, there was no need to be too worried. They would not joke about their own faces. Because the more they talked, the more time it would take. Therefore, Jingwan was directly asked to stay in the Zhou family for lunch. After all, Zhou Shuang was still recuperating. Jingwan was also worried that it would take a long time for her to be exhausted. Therefore, she left after lunch. However, she did not expect that on the way back, she met a tiger again. This time, it was not Li Hongyuan, but Sun Yilin. Compared to Li Hongyuan, Sun Yilin was much more courteous. He didn't even get off the carriage. He didn't want to attract too much attention and affect Jingwan negatively. His carriage also didn't have any insignia. It was next to the Luo family's carriage, but one was facing east while the other was facing west. Jingwan sat in the carriage. She was more or less surprised that Sun Yilin pulled her. "May I know what young Master Sun wants?" Sun Yilin was silent for a long time. It was so long that Jingwan thought that he could not speak. Then, his somewhat hoarse and dry voice came. "I heard that Miss Luo is engaged." Jingwan almost didn't hear the last three words clearly. Her voice was hesitant, soft, and seemed to be mixed with a bit of disbelief. Jingwan was stunned. What was going on? When did she attract such a peach blossom? It wasn't that Jingwan thought too highly of herself and immediately thought of this. It was just that the current secular etiquette was like this. If it wasn't the girl he admired, as long as it was a man with a bit of education, he wouldn't ask another girl such a question in person. But obviously, Sun Yilin's education was absolutely top-notch. To do such a rude thing, he must regard himself as extremely important. She couldn't help but think of the words that Sun Yijia said to her not too long ago. She wanted her to be her sister-in-law and had mentioned Sun Yilin. From the looks of it, it wasn't Sun Yijia's wishful thinking. It was Sun Yilin who had such thoughts and she strongly supported it. Jingwan fell into silence. The word love was the most difficult to understand. Logically speaking, Sun Yilin only admired her and she didn't do anything to seduce him. There was no need to care about it. The problem was that he was someone she knew and was the elder brother of her good sister. It was hard to ignore it completely. Miss Luo has a clever heart. I'm sure you understand my thoughts. Sorry. Jingwan paused and spat out these two words. Although it was a little cruel to directly cut off his thoughts, it was taboo to be clingy and ambiguous in this kind of thing. As the saying goes, if you don't make a decision, you'll be in trouble if you don't make a decision. If Jingwan's thoughts were messed up because such an outstanding man adored her and deliberately left him hanging, not only would it be disrespectful to Sun Yilin, but it would also be disrespectful to Qin Jingmin. It might even be a disguised betrayal. Moreover, even if Jingwan admired Sun Yilin, she wouldn't do anything that went against her principles. Sun Yilin smiled bitterly and covered his face with both hands. His heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife and it was extremely painful. Perhaps he had only liked this young lady before, but after knowing that she was suddenly engaged and would marry another man in the future, that her life would not involve him and that it would be extremely difficult for him to even see her, he finally woke up from his daze. Other than her, he was afraid that he would not be able to place another woman in his heart in this lifetime. He had missed this opportunity just like that. He thought that she was still young. He thought that she had just arrived in the capital not long ago and even if the Luo family wanted to find a husband for her, they wouldn't be able to finalize a candidate in such a short time. He thought that with his talent, appearance, character, and even his family background, when he went to the Luo family to propose marriage, the Luo family would definitely not object and everything would be done naturally. Looking at it now, it was all because he thought too highly of himself and thought too highly of himself. How could he forget that a truly good young lady would definitely be sought after by hundreds of families? If he had taken a fancy to her, he wouldn't have made his move earlier. Was he waiting for others to fight over her? Look at how smart Qin Jingmin was. He was so stupid. That's right, Jingwan's engagement was so fast. Other than Madame Luo's uneasiness, it could also be that Qin Jingmin and the Qin family wanted to take advantage of the fact that the treasure had not been discovered by more people to hold firmly in their hands. Only then could they be at ease. But why did it have to be these few days? Even if it was 2 or 3 days later, he could still give it a try and fight for a chance. When he found out, it was already a foregone conclusion. He was able to find out about this matter today thanks to his servant. When he was shopping with him on the street, he accidentally bumped into Qin Jingmin, who was happily meeting his friends. Because his friends teased him, he revealed the identity of the girl. As Sun Yilin's most trusted person, he naturally knew his young master's thoughts. How could he not? He almost crawled and rolled back to tell him the news. When he heard the news, he only felt like he was struck by lightning. The only reason he had was to change into an inconspicuous carriage. When he entered the Luo family's house, he did not directly announce that he was looking for Jingwan, using his sister's name. When he found out that Jingwan had gone out, he suppressed the anxiety in his heart and waiting for an opportunity to say a few words to her. But, what could he say? Hoping that she would have the same feelings for him. In fact, the result was not unexpected at all. Miss Luo, you're really heartless. But it was precisely because of this heartless nature that he found it even more difficult to part with her. If it was someone else who immediately broke off the engagement the moment he expressed his feelings for her and wanted to marry him, he would most likely disdain her. This was the root of a person's inferiority. Jingwan remained silent. This heartless feeling was also more than passionate. Not to mention the current feudal society, even in her previous life, people who thought they were romantic and passionate were in fact fickle in love. This was something that Jingwan despised the most. If Miss Luo breaks off the engagement, this one will go to the Luo family to propose marriage. Will Miss agree? Marriage is a big matter, the parents' orders, the matchmaker's words. In other words, it was not something that she could decide. Sun Yilin could not say whether this answer made him happy or disappointed. Perhaps she actually had a trace of good feelings towards him, but because of the girl's modesty, she gave a proper answer, or perhaps she really did not care at all, but in order to save her face, she did not say anything that was hard to accept. This one understands. It was rude of me to suddenly look for Miss Luo today. Please forgive me. No, young master does not need to take it to heart. It is rare for Yi Jia to have a close friend who understands her. I hope that your friendship will not become distant because of this one. If that is really the case, this one will not be able to absolve myself from the blame even if I die 10,000 times. Young master, please rest assured that this will not happen. Of course, this was on the premise that Sister Jia did not let the idea of becoming her sister-in-law become an obsession. That would be for the best. I hope that today's matter will not cause any trouble for Miss Luo. This one will take his leave first. After Sun Yilin's carriage left, Jingwan's carriage also slowly moved, increasing its speed bit by bit. The two carriages were clearly moving in opposite directions. I did not expect that the famous young Master Lin actually admires our Miss Luo. Qing Zhu was so surprised that she could not close her mouth when Sun Yilin came to find her. Now, she could finally speak. Wretched girl, what nonsense are you blabbering about? Can't you just keep your mouth shut? What would happen if an outsider heard this? Qing Zhu subconsciously reached out to pat her. Qing Zhu felt wronged. This was her personality and she couldn't change it. Because of this mouth of hers, she was often reprimanded by the wet nurse and wet nurse. Fortunately, she had never said anything she shouldn't say outside and she had Jingwan's protection. That was why she was able to stay in the position of head maidservant. Otherwise, she would have long been kicked out to be a maidservant. Moreover, so what if young Master Lin fancies our Miss Luo? Our Miss Luo is so good, it would not be strange for any young master to fancy her. Qing Zhu slapped her own mouth. This servant was wrong. Sister Qing Zhu is right. Our Miss Luo is the best in the world. Jingwan did not know whether to laugh or cry. She did not know when the people around her had such thoughts. Don't talk nonsense. What do you mean by the best in the world? I can't afford to be called your Miss Luo. This servant is not talking nonsense. If you don't believe me, you can ask the wet nurse. Does she think so too? Qing Zhu said rather unconvinced. Yes. Wet nurse Gong nodded solemnly. She was not exaggerating. She really thought so. This time, Jingwan was really speechless. Fine, fine. Whatever you say. I can't win against you. Just forget about this matter. Don't worry, Mississippi, how could they not know the importance of this matter? A few days ago, when she was stopped by Li Hongyuan, she was accompanied by Qing Lan and Qing Mei. If these two matters collided, she did not know what kind of thoughts they would have. Sun Yilin did not directly return to the Fu. Instead, he let someone drive the carriage aimlessly on the street. He just sat in the carriage silently. The manservant sitting outside and the attendant who was in charge of driving the carriage for him looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Young Master's state was really not right. Even if Duke Ding had once asked young Master Lin to give in for the sake of young Master Lin and not let him stand out and let him be a pure scholar and not be able to fulfill his ambitions, young Master Lin would at most be silent. It was not like now dead silence. Although it was a random walk, it was basically some of the places that Sun Yilin often went to on weekdays. The flower market was burned. Even the shops that were not affected had been closed. Moreover, if he went to see the flowers at this time, it might make young Master Lin even more sad. After all, Miss Luo was also a person who loved flowers. Who knew if he would think of her when he saw the flowers? Born in a place like Duke Ding's mansion, all of his parents and brothers were normal people. Only Sun Yilin was clean and honest. It could be said that he was incompatible with them. He was not a normal person. Once, even Duchess Ding suspected that her son had a hidden disease, so she did not even want to arrange a room for him. In fact, Sun Yilin accepted the treatment of the imperial physician without any hesitation. The result was that he was very normal. His likes and dislikes were all elegant and not deliberately cultivated. It was as if he was born this way. In addition to flowers and trees, Sun Yilin's other hobby was nothing more than calligraphy, and rare paintings. When he had nothing to do, he would talk with his friends. Compared with others who talked about the court, the world, and the common people, he was more immersed in the beautiful scenery of mountains and rivers in travel books. After all, he had come into contact with what others said. Only when you really came into contact with it, you would know the hardships and difficulties in it. It was not a matter of a few words of exaggeration, and it was not something that could be solved by a few words of what you would do if you were in his place. Therefore, the places that Sun Yilin often went were actually the places that many scholars liked to go, especially when the imperial examination in spring was imminent. Scholars from all over the country gathered together in groups of 3 or 5. They either talked loudly and expressed their ambitions, or whispered to each other and talked about knowledge. In the past, perhaps he would have the mood to quietly listen to their various, beautiful visions. But now, when these things entered his ears, he only felt exceptionally irritated. Just as he was about to return home, he suddenly heard the voice of a servant. "Young master, it's that Chen family's young master, Chen Jingmin." Sun Yilin almost subconsciously lifted the curtain of the carriage. He also wanted to see what kind of person would be able to snatch the girl he liked first, and whether he had the ability to match Miss Luo. In other places, there might not be many people who knew Sun Yilin, but there were definitely many people in the vicinity. When he appeared, someone with sharp eyes saw him and hurriedly came up to welcome him. "Young Master Lin, I haven't seen you for a long time. Do you have time today to sit in the building and have a drink?" Only then did Sun Yilin discover that this was the untitled building. Untitled people were naturally untitled. There were no words on the plaque above the door, only a square seal at the bottom left corner. This was a place that only entertained scholars. Moreover, scholars were not as simple as just knowing a few words. First, they had to prove that they could pass the threshold. There was celestial music, as long as one was able to catch it, they would definitely be able to feast their ears. There was good wine and tea, comparable to the tributes of the emperor. If one had the ability, they could use it as much as they wanted. There were precious paintings, and if one had the ability, they could also obtain them. Even if one could not take them away, they could still feast their eyes. In the backyard, there was a huge library that was all-encompassing and could be copied. And these things were all free of charge. For scholars, the untitled building was definitely the place that they yearned for the most. Especially for those students from poor families, they could not wait to soak in there for 24 hours a day. Of course, there were also relevant regulations for this situation. Otherwise, this place would be completely occupied by the students from poor families. In addition, the biggest feature of the untitled building was that it limited the number of people who could enter. In the case that it was full, people could only wait for others to leave before the people behind could enter. Even if it was a person as honorable as a prince, they also had to abide by this rule. Who was it that had such big confidence, such big spending, and dared to make such a rule? On the plaque, there was a seal with the words, "As if Shen is here in person." It was enough to explain everything. Who would dare to act rashly? Some people said in private that perhaps only Jin Qinhuang dared to break the rules here. However, the living king of hell had no interest in this place. This place had existed for several years, but they had never seen a certain person set foot here. Most likely, no one knew that the untitled building was not the product of Luchingdi's whim, nor was it a wise decision. It was purely for his ignorant and incompetent evil creature's son to increase his knowledge and cultivation. Luchingdi's idea was very simple. It was to let him have more contact with scholars. Maybe he would like to read. As it turned out, Luchingdi's idea was too naive. After he was once again angered to the point that he had nothing to say, he simply threw it to Li Hongyuan and let him deal with it however he wanted. In the beginning, there was no name. After that, there was no name. Luchingdi ridiculed that Li Hongyuan also had self-awareness. He knew that he did not have much knowledge, so he would not do such a shameful thing like a plaque. But Li Hongyuan's answer once again made him fall backwards in anger. A Ken is an uneducated person. Perhaps in the future, I will be able to marry a knowledgeable wife. In the future, let your daughter-in-law do the calligraphy. Luchingdi scolded him with a torrent of dog blood. But year after year, he was willing to let his daughter-in-law do the calligraphy, but there was no sign of this daughter-in-law. Li Hongyuan took over the untitled pavilion, but in Luchingdi's view, that evil creature had never cared about it. All the good things inside were given by him, and the people who took care of it were also assigned by him. Luchingdi would never know that the people he assigned were all Li Hongyuan's people. Li Hongyuan was the untitled pavilion's master on the surface, but also its actual master. Because many things in the untitled pavilion were very attractive, not to mention young people, even famous scholars were very tempted. Therefore, many calligraphy treasures were left behind. There were also some who knew that this place was closely related to the emperor, and whether they could use this place to attract the emperor's attention and soar to the sky. Therefore, they all displayed their knowledge and did not hold back. It was easy to find talented people with special talents. Li Hongyuan selected some people for his use, and then handed them to Luchingdi. Luchingdi was complacent that he found another talent who could contribute to the country, but he did not know that these people were loyal to the evil creature he called. Anyway, he had already shown up, and he really wanted to meet Qin Jingmin who had already entered the untitled pavilion, so he got off the carriage. There are still seats in the pavilion. Look at what you're saying. You're here, how can there be no seats? Sun Yilin understood. As the saying goes, there are policies from above, and countermeasures from below. When a person of high status appeared, even if the pavilion was full, there would always be people who would take the initiative to leave, either to take the opportunity to make friends, or out of respect and reverence. He did not notice it before, but it was because he did not care about worldly affairs and was stupid. Sure enough, a person came out of the pavilion and cupped his hands to Sun Yilin. This one has something to do and has to leave. Young Master Lin, please. At the same time, no one else rushed to enter. Sun Yilin nodded. Brother, why don't you leave your name card? We'll have a chat another day. Chapter 94. Because of this small change, countless people in the building who were waiting to watch a good show beat their chests and stomped their feet. It was not like this had never happened before, but they did not know if this noble young master was pretending not to see, or if he did not care about them, or if he was completely ignorant of the ways of the world. If it happened once or twice, perhaps people would still have some hope, but if it happened 3 or 4 times, it would inevitably cause people to be disheartened. As a result, those who would give their seats to him in the future were mostly people who truly admired him. The person who had just left was like Qin Jingmin, an imperial scholar who had entered the capital a long time ago. However, he had no background, no backing, and his talent was average. He knew that his ranking in the spring examination would be very low, and in the final court examination, if he did not do well, he could be in the top 3. He was also a person with an ulterior motive, so he did not want to give it a try. although it was very likely that he would end up like those people before him, and lose the seat he had obtained with great difficulty. The closer it was to the spring examination, the harder it would be to obtain a seat in the untitled pavilion. However, he mysteriously got up and left the pavilion, and then he received a completely different response. Sun Yilan's servant took the name card, and then watched as his master entered the untitled pavilion. There was no other way. Normally, servants like them could still sneak in, and the people in the untitled pavilion would turn a blind eye. Although they were of lowly birth, in any case, they were much more knowledgeable than many ordinary students. When there was a shortage of seats in the untitled pavilion, there was definitely no place for them. Even the imperial scholars who had just entered the capital not long ago knew of Sun Yilan. The 4 heroes of the capital were the 4 most talented people of the younger generation in the capital. The talent of these 4 people could basically tell whether the students in the capital were worthy of their attention. If there was someone who could suppress these 4 people, then there was naturally nothing to be afraid of. However, if they were completely not a match for them, then they had to be careful. Even if people like Sun Yilan did not participate in the imperial examination, they still had to be vigilant. They had to treat the imperial scholars as important as they did, and not underestimate any opponent. Only then could they have the determination to cut off all means of retreat. Even if it was an imperial examination, there would still be local competition. It was related to the teaching and assessment of the local officials. There was a big difference between 1 grand scholar and 10 grand scholars. There was a big difference between a grand scholar and a grand scholar. The better the place, the better the teaching resources. It was different in the capital. Everything was the best under the feet of the emperor. Therefore, for themselves, for their brothers, for their friends, and even for their descendants, they had to give it their all. Sun Yilan was the youngest of the 4 heroes of the capital. One had to know that among those who participated in the imperial examination, there were many who were over 40 years old. In their eyes, Sun Yilan was still wet behind the ears, even though only those who were under 30 were qualified to be selected as the 4 heroes. Sun Yilan had not appeared for a long time, but everyone knew about his deeds in detail. He had become an official of the internal court and close to the emperor. Who knew how many people were jealous? They all thought that it was only because of his good family background and that he did not have any ability. Some people even said that if he participated in the imperial examinations, would he be able to pass as a county scholar? It had to be said that scholars never used a dirty word when cursing people, but the degree of their viciousness was definitely more piercing than that of the most shameless shrew. They could even kill people. Look at his good looks. No wonder he can gain the favor of the princes. He does indeed have the talent. The person who spoke did not avoid the taboo at all. He even purposely raised his voice. How many people did not know about the recent uproar? Thus, everyone immediately understood what these words meant. Although many of them had such thoughts, they did not think that someone would dare to say it so boldly. The building was instantly deathly silent. Sun Yilan, who was standing alone at the entrance, was even more conspicuous. He seemed to be dressed in a low-key manner, but in reality, he was dressed in brocade. Every accessory was expensive and extraordinary. They were just right on him. His actions all showed his great bearing and self-restraint. Although his eyes were somewhat cold, it still showed the world's evaluation of him. A gentleman is like a jade, unparalleled in the world. It had to be said that because of this sentence, although there were many people who wanted to laugh at him, there were even more people who frowned. This person was clearly trying to please the crowd with claptrap. He did not have the slightest strength of character and self-restraint that a scholar should have. It was really embarrassing. Especially those who had lived in the capital for a long time and had seen Sun Yilan's talent. They were very indignant. However, they did not know whether the recent events were true or false. They were only worried that if they spoke up, it would bring more trouble to him. Therefore, they did not speak up to help him. It was Chen Jingmin who ignored his good friend's obstruction and said, "This brother, please be careful with your words. It's just a false rumor. A scholar should have a clear mind and not listen to rumors and stir up trouble." "Oh, another one who hasn't grown up yet. You're so protective of that young Master Lin. Could it be that you have an affair with him?" Ha ha ha. As he spoke, he laughed arrogantly. Because he had attracted everyone's attention, he became even more complacent. "You." Chen Jingmin was very angry. Sun Yilin had long been used to being the center of attention. Whether it was good intentions or bad intentions, he did not even lift his eyelids. He had always been upright and was not afraid of the shadow being crooked. At this moment, he looked at Chen Jingmin but did not say anything. If it was in the past, Sun Yilin would probably ignore it. Of course, in the past, even if there were people who were jealous and doubtful of him, they would at most say a few words. They would not be as daring as this person. However, it was really embarrassing. Sun Yilin was not in a good mood today. Originally, he was not a person who liked to take out his anger on others. However, since someone had bumped into the muzzle of the gun, then don't blame him for not being polite. He casually adjusted his sleeves and wrote a poem with each step. In less than 4 steps, it had already become a poem. Everyone was so surprised that they could not close their mouths. Including those who doubted him, they also put away their contempt. This was really too amazing. Although the core content of the poem was simple and straightforward, a jumping clown, playing to the gallery, lamentable and laughable, but the poem was gorgeous, the content was rich, and the charm was long. No matter how one looked at it, it was a good work. Except for a certain person whose face was green and white, the rest were all slapping the table and praising it. The part of the people who were from the capital were even more excited. They all knew that Sun Yilin was very knowledgeable, but he was a very low-key person. Usually, they rarely saw him study in public. But they did not expect that this person with a very good temper, once provoked, would not hold back in his counterattack. He could directly trample people to death. Not to mention other things, once this poem was out, that person just now, even if he could get a good ranking in the imperial examination, in the end, he was afraid that he would not get a good result. Those who had the heart to mock Sun Yilin before had to restrain themselves at this time. He had worked so hard to get to where he was today, but at this crucial moment, he made a mistake. The gains did not make up for the losses, not to mention that it was just because of his cheap mouth. Moreover, Sun Yilin was the favorite person by the emperor's side. Offending him was definitely not a wise move. Perhaps thinking of what might happen to him in the future, in a moment of grief and indignation, he did not want to apologize and seek Sun Yilin's forgiveness. Instead, he lost the last bit of his scholarly demeanor and cursed without thinking. Not only Sun Yilin, but also the officials, the royal family, and even the current emperor. He used his background to not give people a way out, oppressing the common people, eating a vegetarian position, not doing anything in a superior position, and so on. At this time, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and the people who were originally dissuading him all retreated 3 feet, afraid that they would be implicated by him. This was no longer as simple as a heart that was unable to calm down, it was purely a loss of rationality, no different from courting death. The faces of the people in Untitled Restaurant were extremely black. In the entire capital, there was no one who was the most vegetarian on the surface, other than their actual master, there was no one else. The shopkeeper ordered, "Throw him out for me." Then, that person was really lifted up on all 4 limbs and thrown out. Perhaps now that he had fallen to such a state, it was already too late to redeem himself. He might as well smash the pot that had already been broken and wanted to put on a big show in front of Untitled Restaurant. Unfortunately, before he could say a word, a few people came forward, cleanly blocked his mouth, and dragged him away. The shopkeeper's hands were folded in his sleeves as he coldly watched. Sun Yilin did not even frown, and those who had lived in the capital for a long time sneered, "What an idiot! Did he really think that the plaque outside the restaurant, 'As if I am here in person,' was just for show?" At this time, those who did not know were all silent like cicadas in winter. It turned out that outside the restaurant, there were people from the emperor. In the blink of an eye, the shopkeeper looked at Sun Yilin with a smiling face and respectfully said, "Young Master Lin, where would you like to sit?" A person who had a good relationship with Sun Yilin waved at him. Sun Yilin did not refuse his good intentions, but he did not directly go over, and instead waved at Qin Jingmin. Then, he instructed the shopkeeper to prepare a jar of 10 years old Huadiao wine for him. Unlike other places, the Huadiao wine of Untitled Restaurant was a first-class strong wine. Qin Jingmin was somewhat overwhelmed by the favor, and pointed at himself in disbelief. It must be said that these young men all revered Sun Yilin. They were clearly of the same age, but Sun Yilin was already standing at the top of the mountain, while they were at most halfway up the mountain, and many were still pacing back and forth at the foot of the mountain. Qin Jingmin's good friends were both openly and secretly urging him to hurry over. This was a rare opportunity. If he missed this village, there might not be this shop anymore. However, Qin Jingmin was still at a loss. He only helped because he could not stand it, and did not mean anything else. However, since the other party had already invited him, he should at least go over and say hello, and not be considered rude. After thinking about it, he walked over. Young Master Lin, just now, unexpectedly, Sun Yilin did not even bother with him, and walked over to where his good friends were. "Follow me." Not to mention Qin Jingmin, even those who were slightly familiar with Sun Yilin were somewhat confused by him. This was not his usual style. And as the person involved, Qin Jingmin, was naturally the most affected. Just a short moment of eye contact, and he could clearly feel the coldness in his attitude, and that extremely critical sizing up, and finally, there was dissatisfaction written in his eyes. What was going on? "Young Master Qin, please come over for a moment." After Sun Yilin sat down, he saw that Qin Jingmin was still standing at the same spot in a daze, his fingers tapping on the table, and the speed was rather fast. If his servant was here, he would know that his young master was a little irritable. The first time he saw Qin Jingmin, he felt that he was far from being worthy of Miss Luo. Perhaps there was no problem with his character, but his heart was too upright, and this was not suitable to be in the official circle. However, without a high position and generous salary, how could he pamper Miss Luo? Could it be that after marriage, she would give up the things she loved, and work hard for the family's livelihood? Moreover, he looked too immature. If he married an ordinary lady, perhaps they would be called a perfect match. However, that was Miss Luo. If she were to be together with Qin Jingmin, those who did not know would think that it was Miss Luo who was taking care of a child. Also, sometimes he looked dull. What kind of interest could there be? For a man who was full of flaws from head to toe, how much responsibility could he have? The problems that Sun Yilin was thinking about might exist, but it was far from being that serious. It was because he cared too much, and because he was just a step late, he had lost to such a person. Even if it was unintentional, he had subconsciously magnified the other party's flaws by 100 times, and was nitpicking at him. Young Master Lin knows me. Qin Jingmin was once again surprised, and in Sun Yilin's eyes, he was once again a fool. Seeing that Sun Yilin's speed of knocking on the table was getting faster and faster, even the dullest person could tell that this young Master Lin did not seem to be in a good mood. He was usually such a gentle person, but now he could not suppress his anxiety, which meant that the matter should be very serious. The surrounding people subconsciously slowed down their breathing. Sun Yilin had a high position among the scholars in the capital, and in addition to his noble status, some people even unconsciously pushed him up to the altar. Now, he was clearly giving him a chance, but in reality, he was preparing to make things difficult for him. But after thinking it through, he found it hard to reject such an opportunity. Whether it was an opportunity or a trap, he would only know after the matter was over. There were both good and bad things, and if he did not do it, he might not be able to completely avoid it. But if he did it, there might be great benefits. There was no need to hesitate about what to choose. Then, this one will show his incompetence. Chen Jingmin's pen seemed to be full of spirit, and he did not stop writing. It could be seen that he was very confident, and his writing was also very smooth. Compared to people of the same age, he was already very good. Sun Yilan's tense face finally relaxed. At least there was something good about him. If his knowledge was not good, even if he had to be a villain for once, he would think of a way to ruin this marriage. The current Sun Yilan and Li Hongyuan belonged to two extremes. Li Hongyuan did things by unscrupulous means, but because of his father's interference since young, Sun Yilan had been learning the way of a gentleman. For example, on the matter of Jingwan, he hoped that Jingwan would be better, and not the actions of a villain. He must snatch Jingwan. He was going through a metamorphosis, but something that was engraved in his bones was not so easy to remove. No longer caring about what Chen Jingmin's final article would be, Sun Yilan began to drink cup after cup. At first, he did not attract the attention of others, but gradually, more and more people focused their attention on him. What exactly happened to young Master Lin? One cup after another was not enough. Sun Yilan directly picked up the wine pot, raised his head, and the clear wine flowed into his mouth in a line. Gulp, gulp, gulp. The part that he did not have time to swallow slipped out of his mouth, some of it soaked his clothes, and some of it fell to the ground. After finishing the pot, he threw it away, and picked up the second pot. One must know that a pot of Huadiao wine could hold more than 10 pots. Yilan, you can't drink like this. His friend could not stand it and reached out to grab the wine pot. Move away. Sun Yilan swatted his hand away. Yilan, what happened? What happened? Sun Yilan tilted his head and was stunned. Nothing, I'm fine. Sun Yilan rarely drank, so his alcohol tolerance was not very good. After 3 pots, he was completely drunk. However, he was like most people, and did not admit that he was drunk. Done. Let me take a look. He stood up and shakily took Chen Jingmin's article, shook his head, and quickly read it. He did not comment, but took a pen and began to write. Even if he was drunk, his writing was still steady. Or perhaps it was because he was drunk, his writing was wild and impeccable. However, the content was frightening, extremely sharp, and penetrating. Even the onlookers felt uncomfortable, not to mention the emperor. Even if Sun Yilan was the emperor's favorite person, if this article were to spread, he would be in trouble. After he finished writing, Sun Yilan put down the pen and stared at the paper in a daze. Perhaps it was because he was a little shocked when he looked at it again. He became sober and rubbed the corner of his eyes. This is the homework that the emperor gave me today. He asked me to submit it tomorrow. Young Master Qin, please write another article that you are good at. Be careful. It seemed that he intended to submit his own article as well. Hiss, the people around all gasped. This was too bold. However, after they calmed down and thought about it, this seemed to be the wisest thing to do. Sun Yilan was a member of Prince Kang's faction. This article was actually a weakness. With so many people seeing it, it was better to do it himself instead of letting his opponent submit it. Perhaps this boldness would gain the emperor's favor and make him think more of him. Even if he was punished in the end, it was better than being falsely accused by his opponent. However, it was also because of this article that they knew that Sun Yilan's reputation was not undeserved. He was worthy of being one of the 4 heroes of the capital and did not disgrace this name. Other than a few arrogant and conceited people, after secretly comparing in their hearts, they all expressed that they were far inferior compared to Sun Yilin. Young Master Lin, what are you being long-winded for? Hurry up and write. Or is this all you can do? Have you exhausted all your skills? Previously, she was only cold and hard, but now, she was simply icy cold. Perhaps because of her attitude, Chen Jingmin had some thoughts of competing with her. Therefore, when an article came out, everyone was surprised. This article, compared to the previous one, was not just a little bit better. Moreover, this did not mean that his previous article was not good. Was this brat hiding his strength just now? Faced with everyone's doubts, Chen Jingmin was a little embarrassed. To be honest, after he finished writing, he was a little surprised himself. He had exceeded his usual performance. Very good. Even Sun Yilin gave such an evaluation. Maintain this momentum. He folded the 3 articles and put them properly in his sleeve. Help me out. The last words were also said to Chen Jingmin. Seeing that he could not stand steadily, Chen Jingmin's anger had almost dissipated because of that article, so he did not refuse. Sun Yilin's servant, who was outside, heard that his young master was drinking to drown his sorrows and was extremely worried. However, due to the rules, he could not enter and could only wait anxiously. When he saw him coming out, he hurriedly went up to welcome him. Beside the carriage, Sun Yilin tugged at Chen Jingmin. If you don't treat her well, don't blame me for snatching her. Chen Jingmin was confused and did not understand. What did young Master Lin say? Miss Luo, if I was not held back by other matters, how could it be your turn? Chen Jingmin's face changed. He finally understood the reason for his strange attitude. No wonder someone reminded him to move quickly. He was not the only one who thought highly of the Luo family's 3rd young lady. He did not expect that there would be such a strong competitor. I will not give young Master Lin a chance. Sun Yilin smiled coldly and allowed his own people to help him into the carriage. If he did not drink, he probably would not have said such a declaration. After all, if he met a narrow-minded man, he would most likely suspect that his fiancée was a promiscuous woman. This would definitely cause a lot of trouble for Jingwan. But he drank too much and was not so rational. If he did not let Chen Jingmin know of his existence, he would always feel a little indignant. If he did not give him some pressure, he would still think that it was natural for him to get the beauty. Without any hindrance, he would not know how to cherish her properly. Chen Jingmin looked at the carriage slowly leaving and the sense of urgency in his heart grew stronger. What did this young Master Lin have to do with him? One moment he was still revering him and the next moment he wished he could kick him far away. His cousin was his and they were already engaged. He was justified and no one could snatch her away. So what if he was proud of himself? As long as he did not marry his cousin, he might not be able to be proud until the end. So what if he was confident of passing the imperial examinations? After realizing the gap between him and Sun Yilin, his goal was to at least get 1st rank. If he could not even get 1st rank, what qualifications did he have to talk about? Chen Jingmin returned to the untitled building and bid farewell to his friends. What he needed to do was to go back and continue his studies and not waste his time on such meaningless things. Everyone was confused by his actions and in the end, they only thought that he was provoked by Sun Yilin. The matter here had just ended and many people from the other parties had already received the news. There was no other way. Sun Yilin had been in the limelight recently and even the slightest movement would alert them. Moreover, this matter was not considered small. His opponent sighed inwardly. Even if he was drunk, he was still meticulous and thoughtful. Everything was out in the open. It was obviously not advisable to submit his essay before him. However, it did not mean that they could not do something. They could criticize his arrogance and shameless boasting. If they could reduce the emperor's good impression of him to 0, that would be the best. After all, it was a fact that two princes fought because of him. It was inevitable that the emperor would have a knot in his heart. However, the deepest impression that this matter left on them was that the usually gentle and amiable Sun Yilin actually had the potential to be arrogant. They could not tell. Li Hongyuan naturally knew about this matter at the first moment. Compared to the other people who only received the complete contents of the 3 essays, Li Hongyuan received the original. That's right, there was such an expert in the Untitled building. As long as he took a look, he would be able to copy almost 100% of the original. The reason why it was close was mainly because the form was exactly the same, but the charm was sometimes a little lacking. This was something that could not be helped. No matter how skilled a person was, it was not easy to enter the state of another person's writing. For example, Sun Yilin's essay. In Li Hongyuan's view, it was already not bad if it had 20 to 30% of the charm of the original. Even if Sun Yilin was a love rival, Li Hongyuan did not deny him. After reading Qin Jingmin's 2 essays, the difference was a little big, but that was it. He threw the 3 essays to the side. Sun Yilin was so kind to help recommend him. This will save us the effort of wasting our time on Qin Jingmin. If he still can't enter the 1st grade, don't blame this prince for giving him an even worse wife.